This is the story of a man who once fought against drugs but later became trapped in the very web he was trying to destroy. When honest officers around the world learned the truth about him, they were stunned, and then they made it their mission to bring him down. Around the 1980s, in the American city of Los Angeles, the drug trade had exploded. When law enforcement tightened crackdowns in Florida, drug trafficking routes began to shift. Now, narcotics were entering through Mexico and flowing directly into California. Every year, nearly 100,000 people were being arrested. Out of those, around 20,000 cases were drug related. Police raids began uncovering massive amounts of cash and huge quantities of narcotics. The situation deteriorated so badly that local police could no longer control it. That's when the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration, had to step in. Leading the fight was Darnell Garcia, a law enforcement officer who began his career with LAPD and eventually rose through the ranks to join the DEA. Darnell carried a relentlessly positive mindset. Even in the toughest situations, he would say, "Everything will be fine." Garcia had two close partners, Ed Williams and Brian Hudford. The three of them risked their lives every single day trying to remove drugs from the streets. The work was dangerous, but Darnell was exceptionally skilled at it. He understood the language of the streets and operated with sharp, calculated intelligence. Within the DEA, Darnell had built a macho hardman image, which proved extremely useful in undercover operations. Garcia was originally from New York, but later moved to Los Angeles with his family. He completed high school there. After graduation, he enlisted in the US Army. During the Vietnam War, he served for 3 years. After returning from the military, he resumed his college education. That's when he developed an interest in something new, martial arts. He trained alongside superstars like Chuck Norris and eventually became a champion himself. He even landed roles in major films including Enter the Dragon. Darnell always wanted to move forward, whether it was sports, films, or policing. For Darnell, being just a good cop was no longer enough. In a city like Los Angeles, where some people lived in extreme wealth, police officers often found themselves surrounded by millions in cash during raids. That kind of money tests a man's honesty, especially when his own salary is low and running a household is a struggle. Darnell wanted a better life, expensive cars, a large house, a stylish lifestyle, but his government job couldn't fund any of it. Slowly, he began taking shortcuts. He started telling himself, "I risk my life every day and get nothing in return. If I keep a little money for myself, what's so wrong with it?" That mindset pushed him onto the path of corruption. Darnell Garcia was now living a double life. On one side, he was a DEA anti-drug officer. On the other hand, he had begun playing the very drug game he sworn to destroy. He started spying on drug dealers, watching where they stored their narcotics. Before the DEA could even conduct a raid, he would arrive first and make the entire stash disappear. The plan was simple, yet brilliantly cunning. He knew one thing for certain: a drug dealer would never go to the police to file a complaint, so there was no one to report him, no one to expose him. Garcia was now playing both sides of the game. He carried police credentials which made drug traffickers fear him less. He knew something else too. Most dealers were smart enough not to open fire on police. In the 1980s, drug dealers were heavily armed, but they usually avoided direct confrontation with law enforcement, and that gave Garcia confidence. He began to see himself as invincible. Gradually, his two partners, Hudford and Williams, also became involved. Together, they built their own narcotics networks. Wearing police uniforms, they had now become real smugglers in disguise. At first, Garcia only stole cash, but soon he began stealing cocaine as well. Now all he needed was someone who could sell the drugs, and he found that person quickly. He began reconnecting with the same old contacts. The very people who once worked as his informants were now selling drugs on the streets for him. Garcia and his partners had built a network that rivaled real criminal gangs, and the most shocking part, that they were running it from inside the DEA itself, and the agency had no idea. Garcia no longer felt loyalty to the agency that paid his salary. He knew exactly where the system was weak, and he exploited every vulnerability. With every successful theft, his confidence grew. In January 1983, Garcia and his partners stole nearly 1 pound of cocaine from the DEA seizure. To hide their crime, they used the very tricks they had learned from criminals over the years. For example, street dealers often mixed baking soda into cocaine to increase its weight. Garcia adopted the same tactic. His method was extremely calculated. He would first remove the real cocaine from the packets stored as official evidence, then in its place he would fill the packets with baking soda. But he was careful about one thing. He always left behind traces of real cocaine, so when the DEA labs tested the evidence, they would still detect narcotics and never suspect theft. The plan worked flawless. The DEA never realized that the evidence had been tampered with. In just the first 2 years, Garcia and his team stole drug nearly 10 times. The total street value? Around $300,000. Because the work inside the investigation agency, he knew exactly when, where, and how drug seizures would occur. He would personally surveil drug dealers first, identify where the narcotics were hidden, and then strike before the DEA even arrived. He would steal the entire stash before official raids could take place. The plan sounded simple, but it was deeply cunning. He was certain of one thing: no drug dealer would file a complaint, and he himself would never confess, meaning there was no witness and no whistleblower. Garcia continued playing both sides. He shielded himself behind his badge because he knew as a police officer no dealer would dare retaliate against him. As time passed, Garcia, Hudford, and Williams together built their own drug operation. At first they stole cash, then cocaine. Now they needed a reliable street distributor, and Garcia knew exactly where to find one. He went back to the same informants who had once worked cases for him and gave them a new order: sell my cocaine on the streets. This was one of the strangest aspects of drug investigation. Officers who fight crime spend most of their time surrounded by criminals, and the real challenge is not becoming part of the darkness themselves. But sometimes that very proximity opens the door, because these officers' entire careers are spent dealing with drug traffickers. Garcia and his crew had now built a network that rivaled any city gang. Their operation was thriving, profits were pouring in, so much so that the money itself was about to become their biggest problem. At this point, the hunger to earn more wasn't the problem anymore. The real challenge was where to hide the money. Financial laws at that time were strict. If someone deposited large sums into a bank account, suspicion was immediate. The government had clear regulations. If a person deposited more than $10,000, the bank was required to report it. So Garcia had to operate entirely in cash, but managing that much physical money was becoming difficult. He needed a system to store it safely and secretly. Garcia turned to his girlfriend, Vicky Watford. She worked as a legal secretary. He asked her to purchase cashier's checks, each worth $9,990. The amount was deliberately kept below $10,000 so banks wouldn't have to report it to the government. Once Garcia had accumulated enough checks, he searched for a place where he could hide this wealth safely, and he found that place in Switzerland. In 1983, Garcia, Hudford, and Williams, they traveled to Zurich. Switzerland's banking system is as secretive as it is powerful, and for men like Garcia, it was exactly what they needed. In his very first deposit, Garcia submitted 12 cashier's checks. The combined value, $100,000. But this was only the beginning. By 1984, Garcia was stealing drugs from the DEA, 1 kilogram at a time. He was convinced no one would ever find out. In 1985, the DEA transferred him from Los Angeles to Detroit, but Garcia refused to go. As a result, he was dismissed from the agency. But Garcia retaliated. He filed a discrimination lawsuit against the DEA. A man who had been robbing the agency for years was now taking it to court. And incredibly, Garcia won the case. The DEA was forced to reinstate him. That victory made him even more fearless. Then in October 1984, 1 kilogram of heroin was discovered missing from the DEA evidence vault. Investigators first questioned the officer responsible for storing the evidence, but he denied everything. Signed and sealed access logs revealed that multiple agents had entry rights to the vault. Darnell Garcia was one of them. The DEA launched an internal investigation and asked several agents to undergo polygraphic tests. Many agents refused. Garcia was one of them. He knew if he took the test, he'd be exposed. But polygraph exams couldn't be forced, so Garcia walked away untouched. Looking Internal Affairs straight in the eye, he declared, "I'm not taking any test." When the polygraphs produced no results, the DEA focused on agents with vault access. Both Garcia and Hudford were on the list, but Garcia had no intention of stopping. Greed had fully taken control. He believed the DEA would never catch him. That overconfidence made him even more reckless. Then in November 1985, Garcia and his associates, after surveilling a drug-safe house, they were ready to make their boldest move yet. Garcia and his crew had set their sights on one of the biggest drug dealers in Los Angeles. They were certain this raid would be the opportunity of a lifetime. When Garcia entered the location, history was made. Inside, he discovered 400 pounds of cocaine. Its total street value was $18 million, one of the largest seizures in Los Angeles history. Yet this time, there was no press conference, no photos with the mayor, no public announcement, nothing. Because Garcia never recorded the raid. Officially, it never happened. The DEA had no idea the seizure even took place. Garcia quietly diverted the entire cocaine haul straight into his own drug network. To hide the massive profits, the gang once again turned towards Europe. All the money was moved in cash, deposited into secret numbered bank accounts, beyond trace, beyond scrutiny. By now, the trio believed no one could ever catch them. But in 1986, law enforcement got hold of something. A breakthrough finally emerged. A team from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department arrested two well-known drug dealers. Initially, the case appeared routine, just another drug bust. But during interrogation, both dealers began talking. They revealed something shocking. They claimed their supplier worked inside the police system, and they gave a name, Brian Hudford. Investigators ran Hudford's name through the system. The result confirmed it. He was a DEA agent posted in Los Angeles. From there, the team began digging into those associates. Two more names surfaced, Darnell Garcia and Ed Williams. Now, the DEA itself went on high alert. Covert surveillance began on all three men, but the case was extremely sensitive because the question was who could be trusted and who couldn't. When investigations target your own people, the challenges double. Some officers had to be kept out of the probe entirely because they might have been Garcia's friends or allies. And Garcia himself knew. Garcia knew exactly what investigative tools the agency could use against him, and he believed he could evade every single one of them. Investigators discovered that Hudford frequently visited Garcia's apartment. The apartment was located right near DEA headquarters. Agents questioned a staff member from the apartment building. She revealed Garcia always paid his rent in cash. As the investigation deepened, Garcia's life grew more suspicious. Soon, another fact emerged. That apartment wasn't even his real residence. Investigators noticed something critical. His lifestyle made no financial sense. His new car, his new house, didn't match his government salary at all. In 1987, agents learned that Garcia had built a new home in Rancho Palos Verdes, an upscale neighborhood. At that time, a DEA agent's annual salary was roughly around $40,000, but Garcia's house was worth at least $1 million. When questioned by friends, Garcia claimed the down payment money came from an inheritance, and the rest he had taken as a loan. But the agency wasn't convinced. Now officials began examining Garcia's close circle. They hoped to find a clue or a suspicious link, because when someone generates large amount of black money, there is usually an accomplice helping launder it, often a spouse or a girlfriend. Garcia had both. A charismatic DEA agent skilled at living a double life in both his professional and personal worlds. However, it still wasn't clear whether the woman in his life knew about his illegal operations. If Garcia was working with someone, he had hidden it masterfully. Investigators had never seen him meeting drug dealers directly. So far, everything remained circumstantial, suspicion, but no proof. There was no hard evidence against Garcia yet, but then his phone records surfaced. He had been repeatedly calling a number in New York. The DEA then sought assistance from the NYPD, the New York Police Department. When the investigators traced the number, they discovered it belonged to Howard Callan, a former DEA informant who had since become a drug dealer himself. NYPD brought Callan in for questioning, but he denied knowing Garcia, Hudford, or Williams. Police, however, remained suspicious. They searched his apartment. Inside, they found letters and an address book. In that book, Garcia's initial and his phone number were clearly written. Callan's denial didn't last long. Under pressure, he broke. The DEA discovered that numerous overnight packages had been arriving regularly at Callan's apartment. Investigators confirmed these packages were being shipped from Los Angeles. The senders, Garcia and his associates Brian Hudford. Callan then revealed that Garcia and his crew were using him to distribute their drugs. The drugs were shipped through overnight deliveries. Callan would distribute them in New York and then send the profits back to California again through overnight courier services. The system was simple but highly effective. The overnight shipping receipts became the evidence investigators needed. Now, to prevent the trio from warning each other, the DEA made it a critical decision. All three would be arrested simultaneously. After a 3-year investigation, on November 22, 1988, law enforcement moved in. Brian Hudford was arrested outside his home. He offered no resistance. Soon after, Williams was taken into custody as well. Now it was Garcia's turn. A team of officers surrounded his house. Police searched the property thoroughly, but Garcia was nowhere to be found. What they did find were photographs, images that told the story of his fast, luxurious life. Darnell Garcia, once a DEA agent, now a full-fledged drug trafficker, had vanished. But the question was, how did he know the police were coming? Investigators soon uncovered the answer. One of Garcia's girlfriends worked at the courthouse. She had seen the arrest warrant and she warned Garcia in advance. When questioned, she claimed she had no idea where he went. Authorities were visibly frustrated. After years of building the case, their primary suspect had disappeared. Garcia now faced 26 serious charges: drug trafficking, criminal conspiracy, tax evasion, and illegal cash transactions. The DEA maintained surveillance, but Garcia never returned home. He was clever, but disappearing while staying on the ground wasn't easy. Garcia, once a law enforcement officer, was now running from the very law he once upheld. Police still had multiple leads to track him down. After this, the DEA began digging through Garcia's entire file, his old contacts, associates, and informants. Investigators spoke to everyone, but no one knew where he had gone. 2 months passed, then suddenly police received a call. Someone claimed Garcia had been spotted at a nightclub in North Hollywood. It was a major breakthrough for the case. Federal and local police joined forces immediately. They began searching the streets and surrounding areas. This time, they were determined Garcia wouldn't escape again. Garcia considered himself clever, highly intelligent. He believed the DEA would never catch him. He thought he was always one step ahead. But once again, police returned empty-handed. No sign of Garcia, no clue about his intentions. By June 1989, he still hadn't been found. The DEA placed his wife Anita and his 12-year-old son under surveillance, but after some time they disappeared too, without leaving a trace. Now, with his family gone, the agency began suspecting that Garcia had severed all ties with America and possibly fled the country. He was trying to disappear forever. In today's world, if a man has money, he can hide almost anywhere. That's why police needed to capture him as quickly as possible. To stop Garcia, investigators had to find where he had hidden his wealth. During the investigation, it surfaced that Garcia had purchased an expensive home and claimed he had taken a loan from the Italian businessman. But the truth was very different. The loan was completely fake. Authorities examined the paperwork and discovered Garcia had forged the documents himself, all to hide the fact that the house was funded by drug money. Further investigation revealed another lead. In May 1987, $120,000 had been transferred into Garcia's account from a Swiss bank. The DEA requested account information from the Swiss government, but by the time they identified the bank, Garcia had already closed the account. DEA refused to give up. They began digging into the complete history of Garcia's finances. While tracking his money trail, the DEA uncovered more financial records connected to him. They discovered that he had another bank account in Luxembourg. Investigators suspected that Garcia might be hiding there. The DEA now sought help from Interpol because Interpol operates on a vast international network. When they issue an alert, it spreads across dozens of countries at once, to hotels, borders, banks, everywhere. Luxembourg, a small nation nestled between France and Germany, is in reality a major global financial hub. Criminals from around the world often pass through or conduct financial transactions there. An Interpol officer named P. N. Cole received a call from the DEA. He was assigned to track Garcia. Cole knew that Garcia was no ordinary criminal. He had once been a man of law himself, and he knew exactly how to stay one step ahead of capture. Cole went to the bank where Garcia held his account, but once again he was too late. Garcia had already closed that account as well. However, the bank manager clearly remembered the transaction. Garcia had withdrawn nearly $3 million in cash. He stuffed the money into plastic bags and told the manager, "Come outside and I'll show you my car." The manager assumed he was about to see an expensive sports car, maybe even a Ferrari, but when they stepped outside, there was only a bicycle. Garcia had rented that bicycle from a hotel. A hotel sticker was still attached to it. Now Cole finally had a small clue, but a useful one, that might help him track down the clever DEA agent turned drug dealer. Then in June 1989, Garcia was briefly spotted in Luxembourg, but he vanished again almost immediately, still carrying that plastic bag filled with $3 million. Interpol began to believe that if Garcia really was in Luxembourg, then this might be the best chance to catch him. Even though Garcia was a trained law officer, he was now outside the United States and in a place where he could easily come into public view. He was a stranger there, and the chances of him making a mistake were higher. Garcia was last seen riding a bicycle. Interpol traced that bicycle back to the nearby hotel. When hotel staff were questioned, they recognized him immediately. They said Garcia was a regular guest there. Cole then examined the phone records obtained from the hotel. One of the calls had been made to the travel agency. When agents visited the travel agency, a young female agent recognized Garcia. She told them Garcia had booked tickets through her multiple times and had flown several times from Luxembourg to Paris. Agents still couldn't trace Garcia's next location, but there was hope that he would be spotted again. Cole's focus now shifted back to the money. Investigators believe that Garcia had probably deposited that $3 million into another bank account, but when checks were conducted across nearby banks, no new account under Garcia's name was found. This raised the big question: where had Garcia gone with all that money? Meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, officers were still actively searching for him. The LA investigators had a theory. Whenever you want to catch a fugitive, you should focus on his hobbies or favorite activities. Garcia was a huge fan of Grand Prix racing, and now a major race was about to take place in France. Thousands of people attend such event, making it a perfect place for Garcia to disappear. The DEA and Interpol refused to give up. They began combing through the hotel records and booking data across France just to find Garcia. Then on July 3, 1989, in Paris, luck finally turned in their favor. Inside a hotel register, Garcia's wife and son were found checking in at a hotel. Seeing this, officers grew suspicious, but that Garcia might also be in France. Perhaps he had came from the race. French police then placed the hotel under surveillance, hoping Garcia would show up there himself. But amid all this, in Luxembourg, Garcia made a major mistake. He visited a travel agency to cancel an old ticket and claim a $200 refund. Imagine that. A man hiding with millions of dollars risked exposure for such a small amount. The female employee at the travel agency recognized Garcia. She realized this was her chance. She quietly stepped outside and called the police. She informed Conan, saying that Garcia was about to leave. Conan told her to stall him by any means possible. Keep him talking, delay him, just don't let him go. Now everything depended on that woman, while on the other side, Interpol and his team armed with guns rushed out quickly. For 7 months, Darnell Garcia had been evading the law, but now finally there was a chance to capture him. Garcia was a dangerous criminal. He could have been armed, and he might have even taken the female agency employee hostage, or done something even worse. Interpol and his partners arrived. They had no backup, just two of them facing a highly trained former DEA agent. The situation was extremely delicate. They didn't know whether he was carrying a weapon or not. Slowly, the two officers moved towards Garcia, and in unison they drew their guns. The moment Garcia looked up, he saw two .357 Magnum pistols aimed straight at him. He was arrested on the spot. In the greed to recover just $200, he had exposed himself again and fallen into police hands. After 7 years of running an illegal drug empire and 7 months on the run, Darnell Garcia was finally behind bars. Now, Garcia had been arrested, but bringing him back to America was not going to be easy. Luxembourg law stated that if the United States failed to submit a complete extradition file with solid evidence within 30 days, Garcia would have to be released. They had been given just 1 month. Now the DEA and Interpol began to fear that after all this effort, Garcia might slip through their hands again. Interpol kept Garcia under close watch. They hoped that Garcia would make a mistake in the prison that might reveal the whereabouts of $3 million. Garcia's wife came to visit him, but she wasn't the only one. Just a few days later, his girlfriend showed up as well. One morning, the wife would visit, and by the afternoon, the girlfriend. They realized either Garcia's charm was extremely strong or the influence of his $3 million ran very deep. Now Conan made a move. He began surveillance on both Garcia's wife and his girlfriend, hoping that one of the two might lead them to the hidden money. But the plan failed. Neither the girlfriend made any suspicious move, nor did his wife visit any bank. Conan began to suspect that Garcia had trained his wife on how to detect police surveillance. Within just half an hour, she disappeared from police sight. Now Conan and his team started examining Garcia's belongings. He had 2 large suitcases filled with documents. While going through those papers, they found a number. That number was traced. It led to a bank account, but there was no account under Garcia's real name. Further investigation revealed he had opened the account under a fake identity, the name Ellis. Nearly $3 million had been deposited into it, but when the police reached the bank, the account was empty. The bank manager revealed that Garcia's wife has visited a few days earlier. She had power of attorney documents which she used to withdraw all the money. Now the $3 million had vanished once again. Banks across Luxembourg were put on alert. They were instructed that if any large account had been closed after Garcia's arrest, it should be reported immediately. Records from several banks began to match. The investigation revealed that Garcia had distributed money to both his wife and his girlfriend for safekeeping. Together, they had opened multiple accounts under different names. Interpol and Conan finally tracked down the Garcia's $3 million. Now, the DEA had enough evidence to bring Garcia back to the United States and prosecute him. Garcia's wife Anita and his girlfriend were both arrested and the bank accounts were frozen. Garcia was held in Luxembourg prison for 6 months on charges of using a fake passport. After that, he was extradited back to United States. In Los Angeles, his partners Brian Hartford and Ed Williams confessed to drug trafficking. Hartford received a 10-year sentence, while Williams was sentenced to 5 years. Both testified against Garcia. His wife, was sentenced to 4 years, and his girlfriend received a 3-year sentence. However, both were released on bail and never returned. They remain missing to this day. On November 15, 1991, Garcia appeared before a U.S. court. Then on April 16, 1991, he was found guilty of trafficking cocaine and heroin and laundering millions of dollars through European banks. He was sentenced to a $1.6 million fine and 80 years in prison. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. See you in the next video.